Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Stand Up Your Tubes, where we control the tubes and the tubes never control us. I wanted to introduce you to the two newest members of Margaret's house. It's my schnoodle Chloe right here and my schnauzer Dexter right here. For this photo bomb, Dexter's wearing a little flower. I don't know if it's going to stay, but I liked how the color popped it out. So I want to ask you if you to stay around for the tutorial, but to check the descriptions, because in the descriptions is where I will put the link for those beautiful eyes for the fur yarn that you can order, or you can go buy it at Hobby Lobby, and any other little notes or inconsistencies that I might want to correct in the video. So stick around and I'll show you how easy it is to make these two creatures with the fur yarn muzzles and feet that are so soft on little fingers. So I hope that you'll like, subscribe, and watch the tutorial that follows, and God bless you. Thank you. To get started, we're going to crank out on our 22 pin Addi or Sentro 5 tubes. 3 of them will be identical, 2 will be just one row different. So on all of these, we're going to start with our base color, our body color, and crank on 20 rows. Then for the 2 that are different, and I marked them with a bobby pin so I'll know, after we do our 20 rows, we're going to tie on our fur yarn, crank to 26 rows, then we're going to tie on a 4-ply that is a good match, so I just use my body, tie the 4-ply on, go around one time, and then cast off. And that's going to allow us to pull with the 4-ply on both ends and save a bunch of fur yarn, because we'll be closing this tube up by pulling on the 4-ply. And just a little tip, when I am splicing my 4-ply and my yarn together, I do it at the front of the Addi in between my black pin and my white pin, and just put both ends down in, crank around, and when it's at the Addi is shaped like this, so when my yarn tails get right here, I tie a nice double knot right then and there, and then crank around in the case of the back paw till I get to 26. But for the 2 front paws and the tail, we do 20, tie on our fur yarn, get it cranked around to the back, tie them together, come around until we have 25s. And then we're going to crank to 25, tie on a 4-ply, go around one time, and cast off. So we'll end up with our 2 back legs, 2 front paws, and a tail. And I started with this one and went ahead and put it together so I could show you what it was going to look like. This is the back leg, and the way we're going to do it is you're actually going to have like a little foot that sticks up. And right now it's open, but I'll show you how we're going to close that up to make this adorable little foot. So here's my other one with the pin in it. We're going to do them all the same. So what you do is, I'll show you on this one, you're going to get all of your yarn tails to the inside. So you have the 2 right here, make sure you've got them double knotted. I take a crochet hook and just pull it right up inside. Just like this. And keep track of the yarn tail that you're going to be able to pull this closed with. I'm not even sure. It's this one. Okay, so once you get them pulled up from in here, the ones that are on the edge where you tied on just right before you were going to cast off, we're just going to roll those to the inside of this tube. Let's give this a stretch. Get everything tucked up inside there, and just let the fur come up onto the knit side right where it changes. And we're going to just take our yarn tail, that's why we cast off and on with the 4-ply. Make sure that we're tucked up in here. And where we're pulling, that's actually going to be where we turn it this way to make our paw. So we're going to make sure all of our tails are in. Here's a 4-ply yarn tail that got loose. Everything's in, and I'm going to just start pulling it and tightening it up. I want it to kind of roll this way because I know I'm going to be sewing straight up this way. So when I get that really, really tight, I'm going to put my needle on, make sure it's staying snug, 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 and put a double knot right up here where the fur and the 4-ply meet. Once that's done, then I'm going to take this one's already tied. I'm going to, on this, I'll tell you what, it's so hard, it just sucks the light out of it. I don't even think it would be noticeable if the V's weren't going the same direction. But let's get our V stitches going the same direction so we know where we're going to sew. And let's just mattress stitch up. So we're going to do 2 bars, 2 bars, 2 bars, 2 bars till we get to the top. And when we get up there, then we're going to, let's make sure that we have cinched this up around a couple fingers. And once we get it up, then we're going to put a little stuffing in it. So I'll join you back in a moment. When you finish mattress stitching up, don't snug it up yet. See, you can still see that it's open. We're going to push some stuffing down in here just a little bit at a time, right down into the paw. Just do a little at a time coming in. And we can make these pretty full down here, but where we're sewing it up against the body, we don't want it to be like football player shoulders. So we're going to just not overstuff it up towards the end of the tube here where we're going to be sewing it on to our body. Okay, so now let's pull our yarn, close up this mattress stitch, keeping the pin in here because we want to not mix these up. Okay, and there we have our first little foot. This is where you can decide if you need to push a little more stuffing down in there, and I do want to put a little more down in towards my ankle. Okay. I'm going to move my pin up to the top where the mattress stitch was, just so I know that that's going to be the top of the foot. I don't have a lot of stuffing right here, but I have some stuffing down here. And to shape this little foot, it splays open right here, but we are going to just take some of our yarn and tie it shut right down here. So let's do that to the first one. I'll show you how we're going to do the front paw. It's almost identical, and then we'll just move right on. There's no stuffing in this little open part here, so we're just going to take a piece of yarn. And remember, the reason we moved this up to the top is so we'll know that's the top of the foot where we mattress stitched, because we want that to be our toe. Let me straighten my pin up just a little bit. Okay, so here's going right towards my toe. So I'm going to just come in right where my 4-ply and my yarn comes together. It's going to close up so quick. I'm just going to tie a knot. My fur will just cover this. You won't see it. And take another stitch right in the middle. Not going to take much to close it. And I'm in the mesh of my fur yarn, so I just back my needle out. Actually, I unthreaded my needle. Let me thread back up. Okay, coming over here and try to stay out of your mesh. It just makes it easier. Okay, closing right up. A third stitch back here. Getting us to the heel. And see how nice that covers that up? And we have a cute little shaped paw right here. So I'm going to just bring my needle back up to the yarn tail I started with, tie them together, and bury the thread. And once that thread is buried, here's your adorable, adorable little foot. So cute. Okay, so do your other back paw the same way. Make sure you move your bobby pin up to the top where you mattress stitch, so when you close it up, you know that that's your toe. And then join me right back. We're going to do the two front paws the same way, except we're not going to make this into a little boot shape. We're just going to let it stay round. Mattress stitch it up, give them a good stretch, mattress stitch it up, stuff it out, push it down into the paw, but go gentle up in here so that when we put it on, we don't have football shoulders. So when you get both of these mattress stitched up, join me back. Okay, so we're going to compare our paws to make sure they feel like they're stuffed out about the same. These are the little front ones, and what I do is take my mattress stitch and just give it a little bit of a curve, like I did on this one. So when I sew it on, I can make it kind of come this way a little bit towards the center of the puppy. If they feel like they're stuffed out pretty much the same and you don't have too much right here where we're going to sew, then let's go ahead and I'm going to shorten one of these yarn tails and tie these together. And I do have a gentle little curve going, not drastic, just a little. And now we have our front paws and our back paws. This is our tail. Tied the pom-pom up, everything the same. It always helps to snug up the end of the tube a little bit. So when we do this one, we're going to narrow it down just a little bit. It's really simple to do. So instead of bringing it together and just sewing straight on the edge, I'm going to zoom the camera in just a tad. I know it's hard to see on this dark yarn, but instead of sewing right on the edge, come back a row. Oh, I haven't zoomed in too far. Back on this side, then pick the row out on this side, and when you snug it up, it'll roll that tube in like this and narrow it down. Now you can't always just bring it to the center, roll it up like this, and whip stitch it. It's up to you, but we're narrowing the tail down. So I'm going to go off camera and finish my tail. No stuffing in the tail. All right, I snugged up the tail, shortened one of the ends that I'll just tie onto, left a yarn tail on to sew with. So now we have all of these ready. So we have our two back feet, two front paws, and a narrowed down tail. So now let's do our body tube. And on your 46 or 48 pin, I wanted to keep this little dog kind of short so it doesn't get really, really big. So we crank out 75 rows. I have a couple tuck stitches because even though this yarn wasn't giving me any trouble at all this afternoon, this evening was a different story. So this was the end I started with. That's where I had the most problem, because once I got enough rows on, I reached underneath my Addi, closed up the beanie, and put soft weights down in the center, which for me are these tubes of gems. They're just 99 cents, but they're heavy. An ankle sock with rocks in it. I put those right into the center of the Addi when I can cinch my beanie up at the bottom enough that they don't fall through, and that gives me the weight so I can finish cranking. So I wasn't too worried about the tuck stitches because this end did good. This is the end that had a couple tuck stitches, so I'll make sure that is the part that goes up. So I'm going to turn my beanie up, and this is going to become the body. We're going to be stuffing from the top and the bottom, so this is only closed up because I had my soft weights in there. So I'm going to just loosen it up a little bit so I can put my eyes in. There we go. All right, loosened up. So let's bring them together and start working on the body. Okay, and now we're going to count down 20 rows and do our over, under, and look how long this is. Really, really long. So I'm going to cut one of these off and make that be what I sew with. And if you've never done this, it's just so easy. So let me count down 20. I won't make you watch me do that, and then I'll show you how we're going to do the neck cord. When I'm counting down 20, I'm actually counting the one that wraps around the cast on or the cast off. So all we're going to do, if you haven't done it before, is go under the tube, pick a row. So these, mine just happen to have the points going down. So I'm going to go under and leave myself a yarn tail. Then I'm going to go under the next one. So if these are pointing down, I'm going to go find my next ones that's pointing down and skip over it, and then get to the next one pointing down. So I skipped one, and let's just pull it on through. Then here's the next one where the points are going down, and we're going to go to our next set. So we're just jumping. So we went under this one, over, under, over, under. So I'm going to go all the way around, and I marked on the back too because sometimes it's easy to get off track. So I'll come back on when I'm all the way around. All right, so let's do the same thing at the bottom of the tube. We're just going to go under a row, over a row, under a row, over a row until we make it all the way around. Okay, so I'm using 25mm eyes. I love this little gauge that came with 2 sets of eyes that I ordered. I have put the link in. So I'm using a green background, and I know from doing this little one that I put 7 rows in between the eyes, and I put the posts in 6 down. So I'm going to let this be the center right here where my yarn tails came out. I don't know what my dogs are doing. And I'm going to go ahead and count down 6, have 7 rows, and I'll come right back. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows, and I'm marking with a bobby pin. Then I'll come down 6 and pop my eye posts through. Okay, so what I like about these eyes are the great big backings on them. So I have them lined up now. The top is lined up. So I'm going to just pop this on the back. And these will be my 3rd eye to put on, so my hands are getting tired. So I'm going to go pop it inside out here. Hope this other one here doesn't fall out. And just really try to crank down on this. Okay, I got a good snap on it. And see how nice that back snaps on. So now I'm going to snap the 2nd back on off camera. Okay, so make sure you get a good snap. So I'm going to use bows. That's what I do to make sure that I can make adjustments. So I'm going to just put a bow in here at the neck so I can adjust that later, and maybe shorten down these yarn tails just a little bit. I'm going to close the bottom up a little bit and start stuffing top and bottom. So when I get it pretty well stuffed, I'll join you back and we can compare. Now that I'm pretty well stuffed out, just still have bows, I want to pop these eyes. I didn't do it on my little gray dog, but these are, it's just such a dark yarn that I want to pop these eyes out. So I've threaded up a needle with white yarn. I'm going to come in right underneath, as close as I can get to the eye at the center of the bottom. leave myself a little yarn tail here, and I'm going to bring it out. I'm going to come one complete row past the edge of my eye. Then I'm going to come up on the top of the eye as close as I can get. And come right back into the same hole that I went out. Snug those up a little bit. And it just pops that eye. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And before I go to the other side, I'm just going to tie a little knot here, back behind here, to hold that in place. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on the other eye. Come in at the bottom, come over one row, come back in at the center. So I have both eyes popped out. I'm just going to tie these together inside. Give it a little double knot. Okay, that's just a little something optional that you can do, especially if you've got a darker color like this that's just sucking the light right out of it. Okay, so now we can see our eyes. How cute is that? And keep working on shaping. And when I'm stuffing my head, I'm actually pushing it down into the neck, so into this area right here. If you need to, you can tighten it up again, put another bow in there. And I just take my finger and just push that yarn right down into that neck to stiffen it up. Okay, so our little guy is looking better. And we can cinch up the top tube some. We leave a little hole there, we can still put a little more stuffing in here if we want to, you know, like raise it up. Okay, so what I did on the prototype that worked pretty well, I'm going to make this a little smaller at the bottom, put another bow in it, because I can still poke up into a hole that size just as easily, leaving these long so I can sew that shut on the bottom. Here's a cute little shape coming. So we're going to take our two back legs that have the pins on them, marking the top, and it happens to be this one over here. That's where we have the pins on them, so we know that these are going to be the back legs. And if we go ahead and put them on, it'll sturdy our tube up. So I'm going to show you on this one how we're going to sew them. So with it resting down on the table, we're just going to sew all the way around and kind of up a little bit into the tummy area to keep that foot coming forward. And to make it look good when we sew it, we're going to come back one row off of where we pulled our beanie shut. And that will roll that beanie closure to the inside of the leg and give us a really nice look. So make sure you have tied your yarn ends together. If you haven't, you can do that now. Shorten one down to about 4 or 5 inches so you can tie off to it later. And you'll want to close this up a little bit on the end. Tie it to your mattress stitch. But you don't have to make it beanie, 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 top of the beanie tight, because we're going to roll it. We're going to roll it and make a nice curved edge to sew onto. So get your legs sewn on. The bobby pin is where we mattress stitched, and that's the way we sewed our little foot. We're going to put that as the top of our leg. This one here hasn't been tied yet. So I'm going to tie it, and with it resting on the table and back, and you could even take your little front paws and put them on. And we gave them a, this is my tail, what am I thinking? We gave them just that little bit of a bow right here so that when we sew them on, they want to come towards the center. So the look you're going for, to lining them up and sewing them, is these two coming down onto the table, and then the bottom one. So I'm going to sew the bottom ones on first. And by, just like I told you, here's where we pulled the beanie closed. So I'm going to come back a row off of that and sew into the next row back all the way around, keeping this as the top of my toe. So when I get both legs on, I'll join you back. Okay, so once you have your arms and legs sewn on, and you like the way it's sitting, let's go ahead and close up the bottom and close up our top. So I'm going to pull out my bow and just cinch this up as tight as I can get it without breaking my yarn. That's pretty good. Tie a knot in here. Okay. And then I'm just going to whip stitch it closed. And we all know how to do that. I'm just going to go back and forth, then come back up and tie off to this yarn tail. Okay, I am going to get the bow at the neck is going to disappear and become a knot. And I'm going to bury the threads. Then the last thing we'll do is close up the top of the head. So I'm going to bury these and we'll be right back. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and sew the tail on. So just line it up right at the back so that it's on your table and just sew right around it. So I'm going to get mine sewn on and join you back. Okay, so at this point I like the amount of stuffing in my head, so I just cinched this up as tight as I could get it. Did a double knot. I'm going to take just 1 or 2 stitches up here just to close up that little top part right there. And then I went off and I cranked out on my 22 pin 20 rows. This will become the nose. This is 20 rows. Then I tied on my fur yarn, went around 1 time, and I actually cast off with the fur yarn. I don't like to do that, but I just wanted it to be straight up fur on the end of this ear. And I know I'm going to use this on the snout, so I'm okay with it. So 2 of these, 20, 1 row of fur yarn, and then cast off with the fur yarn. When I get this closed up, then we'll do the ears and put the nose on. And the ears are going to be easy. We're just going to cinch up the end that doesn't have the fur, just to round off the top, put one knot up at the top. Then we're going to snug the bottom up over 3 fingers with our fur yarn tail, tie a knot, and we're going to position them up on top of the head and sew on our ears, and then we'll put the snout on. So I'm going to go ahead and do a knot here, a knot here. Remember, over 3 fingers to square off the bottom. Let that fur kind of just roll out to the outside. I'll be right back. So I'm going to reach up inside my tube and get my 4-ply yarn tail out where I tied this on. It's right up inside here with the fur yarn tail where I tied them together. I'm going to just stick the fur up in there and take my yarn tail and tie this off. That'll give me a nice secure knot. Put that up in it. Adjust it around so all my yarn is sticking out. And that is going to be the end of my ear. I'm going to snip this off and poke that up inside. Then I'm going to take a little piece of my brown yarn and just make sure that I close up the end of this. Okay, so if you have your ears ready, I wanted to bring this little Chloe up to show you because it's so hard to see it on the brown yarn. But I positioned the ears, they're about 3 fingers apart up on top of the head, maybe even a really snug 4, more like 3. But I sewed across the top of each one without tying any knots to make sure I thought they were lined up good. And then I lifted that ear up and sewed across the bottom, tied it off. And when I did that, they came up like this, which is so cute. So I'm going to do the brown ones the same way. I'm going to sew across the top of each one, make sure I like them, and then come underneath and tie everything off. So when I get my ears on, I'll join you back. Before we do the nose, let's give our little guy a top knot. So let's take our 4 fingers and just not even make them snug, but let's just go, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, whoops, slipped off, 5, and then let's just lay it down. And tie a piece of yarn right into the center. Might have been easier to go over a piece of cardboard or something. I want to make sure I get both those ends in. And tie it. Nice and snug. I think you get the idea. I want to tie it one more time. Bring it up to the other side and tie it. And then I'm going to snip it and just sew it up here for a little top knot. That little furry headpiece that my poodle has. Okay, I'm going to snip the ends and be right back. Okay, I'm just going to take a string, one of the ends, come right across the center here, just as if I was putting pom-pom on the end of the beanie. This one coming through the opposite direction. This way. Up. And we just have a little pom-pom up here. I'm going to tie those ends together. So how are we going to make this adorable little furry snout for our precious little dog? And I'm even toying with the idea of a flower instead of a bow up here, keeping that an option. So first we need to have a tube. So on your 22 pin, this is 20 rows. Once you get it off, snug up the ends over about 4 fingers just to square this little tube up. Fold it in half. Get your top edges aligned. And then with your bobby pins, we have this area on the nose right here where we don't want to have any fur. So I'm going to take my bobby pin, just find any row. So whichever way your points are going, that's going to be the row that you picked. Then leave 3 full rows in between that row and put your second bobby pin. Now that I have my bobby pins in, I can see 3 full rows. 1, 2, 3. And then the bobby pins are right on the sides of those rows. And that's going to be how we align our fur. So next, I got my tape measure out and cut, to start with, I think this will be enough, 10 pieces of fur yarn that are 8 inches long. So I have 10 of them here. We'll need a crochet hook, and if you have a latch hook, that would be wonderful. I'm going to use the crochet hook. So we could just cinch it up just a tiny little bit, because this is where we're going to have our nose come down. So come back 1, 2, and into the third hole that you can see here. Get your crochet hook and come down a full row. So where we put our bobby pin, we have 1 full row, and I'm going in pretty close to the edge back here. And that's where I'm going to pull my fur yarn through. So I'm going to come up into the just get one of the little loops in here, take my fur yarn, and pull it through. Just like this. And I know it's long because this is going to let us have something to hold on to and trim it up and whatnot. But if you were really short on your fur yarn, you could go to probably 7 inches and be just as good, as well off. So we want to get 3 of them in here. So now under the first one, we have our first yarn. So let's skip a bar, come into the next one. It's the next double bar down. Pull our yarn through. Working our way to the nose. Come in, skip one little bar here, come into the next one, right here, and put your third piece of yarn through. Let me try again. Okay. Going through both layers because I want to come back to the back side and see that piece of fur on the inside of this tube. So you're not going just under the top layer. Okay, so now when I look inside, look what I have. I have a loop, a loop, and a loop. So let's see what we have right here. So now go to the other side and do the same thing. Skip your first row and then get 3 of these in here. So we're just, this one is back a full row off, skipping that row. So I can come in right here, just under the bar, that make it go all the way to the inside. So we can see that on the inside. That's how we're going to secure it. And take your next 3 through. And when you have that done, I'll show you how we're going to secure those. Now that you have all 6 of them pulled through, this is important. If you look up here and you're seeing the mesh of your fur yarn and not just your soft fluffy fur, then grab your 2 ends, pull them back and through a little bit until your mesh is down and the ends of them are lined up so that you don't have a short one. And now you have just lovely fur up here. So now when we flip it to the other side, we're going to see our 3 little loops in here. So let's get our glue gun out. We're going to secure it. Oh, sorry about my head popping in. But I'm going to grab my glue gun, get it heated up, and we'll secure those. My glue gun is nice and hot. So when you flip it over, if you don't see the 3 loops that came through on the back side, and you made sure that your fur was up and that you weren't seeing the mesh, you rolled it so that you only saw the fur on the inside. Take your glue gun and secure each of these with glue. I'm going on both sides of the loop so I get it nice and secure. Let that dry before flipping it over. That's my alarm clock going off. So I have 3 loops on this side that I can secure. Just going to let that dry. And when it's almost dry, you know, when it just starts tacking up so you can touch it, then I'm going to flatten it down and press that glue into my yarn. I'm blowing on it just to kind of speed it up a little bit. Not quite ready. Not quite ready. I'm going to pause for a second and I'll come back when it's ready. Okay, it's tacking up and I'm just pushing it down with my fingers, flattening it out. This side is going to be a little bit wetter because I didn't blow on it, but you get the idea. Just pushing that down into the fibers. This one's still just not quite ready. I'll go off camera and get that, and we'll do the next row of fur. What I don't want to have happen, and let me just get this little guy out, is that this just flops up and gets out of shape. So making sure that all I'm seeing is the mesh. I'm just flipping this up. I'm only seeing mesh here. I don't want to get into where I'm pulling the nose shut, but I'm just going to come down a row and just run a thin little bead of glue. Then take these yarn ends with the mesh side down and just bring it down gently over that glue, and that is going to keep it in place. So now when I trim it down here, it's not going to just want to flop completely out of position. How easy is that? So let's do this side, and then we'll put our next row on that's bringing it towards the top of the nose. So I cut 2 more, so I'd have 3 for each side, just like we did on the underneath. So I have them ready to go up here. So now where we put our bobby pin, that's where we're going to put our top row, and we're going to do it just like the bottom row. So I'm going to come in here, grab my loop all the way down to the underneath side, and pull through. Make sure I can see that loop on the underneath side, so I'll be able to glue it. And here's where you can make sure that your mesh is down, your fur is up. Just go back and forth a couple times until your fur is up. Then line up your ends. You're going to have the most beautiful snout. So let's do 2 more, the 3 across here. Stay off where you're cinching it up, because you're bringing it to the center and putting the pom-pom on for the nose in just a minute. I'm on my last one, and so just once again, just make sure that you do this. If you see the mesh on the top, then just grab it and just pull it through, kind of turning it until the fur is on the top and the mesh goes down to the bottom. And you can do that just by pulling back and forth through here. Your fur is up, and now you're going to have a nice furry look up at the top. This one I don't quite have twisted around all the way, and there it is right there. Make sure you can see all 3 of your loops on this back side, just and that you're even, that you've pulled it down so you don't have one side real short and one side real long. So just go like this. Here's a long one. Okay. Flipping it over. I see 3 loops. This one I went into the wrong row with, but let's see if I can even see that. Well, it looks good on the top side, so I'm going to go with it. Keep where you're going to cinch it, don't get glue on that part, because we want it to just close up snug. So I'm just going to run a bead of glue on each side of that little piece of yarn that I'm seeing there. This one. Holding that in place. And just like the other one, when it gets just tacked up enough that I can touch it, I'm going to push that glue down into the yarn and then turn it back over, and we're going to close up our nose and attach this adorable little snout. Here is our adorable furry muzzle. So let's close up the end here. That's going to become the nose. And just like cinching up the end of a beanie, we don't need all of this yarn. So At this point, we could even just have done that from the inside, but we'll just tie it off right here because we're going to have a pom-pom for a little nose, get it snug. Thread up our needle, take it to the inside, or you could have just done it from the inside before you turned your snout around, but at least by doing it this way, we can see where the fur is. And that it was looking really good. Okay, now you decide what color nose you want to have. And I went with a black nose, even though it doesn't show up as well as it did on the gray pup. But here we go. Now we are going to put an over, under piece of yarn across the top here so that we can snug that up. Give it some shape, put a little stuffing in there. So right on the edge here, just go under a row, over a row, just like we did on the neck and the bottom of the body, so that we can pull this into shape. So let's get it all the way around. And I started on the underneath side. Here's my nose, here's the bottom. Now that we have our over, under yarn in here, we can just take a little bit of stuffing to give our nose some shape and cinch it up a little bit. Might be able to put just a tiny little bit more, just getting it up to the surface. We're drawing this cord in, and it's going to give us a platform to sew on. So the reason we kept our fur back from the edge is so that we can sew right up along the, coming back from where we pulled, we're going to sew back in here. So I'm just cinching it closed just a little bit more and tying this off. Triple knot it. Once it's sewn on, that's what's going to keep its shape. But let's just tuck this inside. Get our fur down. Make sure we know where the top of our nose is before we try to sew it on. And there we have it. So cute. And we're ready to have a pom-pom nose. And I picked this cinnamon colored one just so you could see it. Here's where we cinched up our nose. And you'll take your glue gun and just position it. And I know it looks funny that it's cinnamon, but you might even want to do it after you've sewn it on your little puppy so you know exactly how you want to place it. But I put mine so that it's a little bit above that beanie pool and right where the beginning of the snout started. So that's your choice when you want to put that on. And I wouldn't use cinnamon, but I will for the show and tell. Okay, well, I think we're about ready to sew this on. Finding my center again. Putting it right up under the eyes. Like this. And sewing all the way around. So when I get it all the way around, I'll join you back. We have some snout trimming to do. We have the nose on and also have some trimming to do. So I, on the other one, kind of came down. I don't want to get it too short. Just held it with my fingers. You'll want to futz with it. See, that's already better. Come over here, hold it down. For my little white snout, I futzed with it quite a bit. Making sure that it just kind of curved down around. Look how cute that nose is. So just play around with it just a little bit. That's what I'm going to do here until I have a cute little snout, and because we have one more thing to do. I got my little jewels out. They come on a roll. I'm just going to glue it down to my felt, and then I've already kind of measured this, and then I'm going to just wrap it around the neck and glue it on right at the back. Okay, that makes a cute little collar. Just going to bring it under the neck, around to the back, and cut most of this off. Okay. And a little dab of glue will do it. And there it is. The collar is on. It's adorable. I'm calling it done. So I hope you'll like, subscribe, actually watch the tutorials. That's how you can help Margaret's House grow this channel, and I will just keep bringing free tutorials. So let's just take a quick little look here. I think it's adorable. All right.